One of those unexpected sights you happen to see in the sky occurred to me on the 27th of March 1976. It was a fine clear autumn Saturday in Adelaide. The sky was cobalt blue. It was early in the afternoon. With a mate, both of us aged 9, we were enjoying the day off school just hanging about near home. We idly watched a small white plane high in the sky. Very high for such a small plane. Jets would fly over higher, but small planes were never that high. It just seemed to be travelling lazily in the sky, getting higher and higher. As our curiosity kept our attention on it, the little plane suddenly exploded into a puff of white smoke, and pieces of it began to cascade down in the sky, glinting as they caught the sun. Then the whole plane descended out of the sky, spiralling down until it finally went out of sight. We looked at each other in amazement. Running home to my house, I excitedly told my mother that we had just seen a plane explode. To our disappointment, she didn't believe a word of it. Until that night on the television news, when the rest of the story was revealed. The story began some time earlier. A young pilot named Russell Owen Williams, aged just 23, was attempting to break an Australian altitude record for a plane with a piston engine weighing between 1,000 and 1,749 kilograms. Russ, who lived in suburban Woodville, was one of 10 children. He became interested in flight at a young age, reading up on planes and flight as a boy, and started flying when he was 17. By the age of 19, he had earned his commercial pilot's licence, as well as an instructor's licence. He was working as a charter pilot and instructor for Ross Air Charter. He had 2,710 flying hours to his credit. In 1975, 9 months before his last flight, he had married, and at the time of his death he held a senior commercial licence, and an application to join Ansett, a large Australian airline, was progressing well. Russ was considered to be the best pilot flying for Ross Air, and considered to be a future passenger jet pilot. The four-seater Cessna had recently been purchased by Ross Air for $42,000 and was modified for the flight. The cabin air vents and the luggage door edges were sealed with tape, and the air filter of the engine was removed. The surplus seats were removed, which meant that 2 small fire extinguishers, which were attached to the back of the right-hand front seat, were also taken out of the plane. A radio communication unit able to operate at the intended height of the flight was installed, along with a sealed barograph, to accurately record the maximum altitude reached. A third item added was a portable oxygen tank constructed by Russ. The tank was mounted on supporting brackets and fitted with a pressure reducer with an on-off valve. The tank was pressurised to a 10,000 kilopascals, which the reducer would alter to 480 kilopascals when it was delivered to Russ via a face mask, connected by flexible tubing. This tank was fitted onto the floor next to the pilot's seat and held in place with a lap strap. The oxygen tank was certified as complying to the appropriate legal standards on the 25th of March 1976. On the 26th of March, Russ was photographed with the plane and the oxygen tank by the Advertiser newspaper as publicity for his record attempt. His mother had tried to talk him out of the attempt, but Russ wanted to achieve the record to promote flying in South Australia. Russ took off from Parafield Airport, north of Adelaide, at 12:10 p.m. Saturday. An observer would monitor the flight to accredit it on behalf of the Royal Federation of Aero Clubs of Australia. Russ's flight plan would take him over Adelaide, crossing the Adelaide Hills, and as far south as Lake Albert. Then he would return via the same route back to Parafield. During that time, once he passed 18,896 feet, he would break the record. At 12:19 he made a routine radio call to Adelaide Air Traffic Control when he was over Adelaide. He was also in contact with Ross Air over a private frequency, during which time he spoke to his wife. At 12:21 he again contacted Air Traffic Control. Just 12 minutes into the flight, at 12:22 p.m, at 12,000 feet over the hills suburb of Blackwood, 10 kilometres south of Adelaide, the plane exploded. Numerous witnesses across Adelaide saw the plane in trouble. Those closer to the area could see flames as well as smoke issuing from the Cessna. A flying instructor saw orange flames spurt from beneath the plane 10 to 15 seconds before the explosion. The The engine cut out at about the same time. He said the smoke turned darker until it was a black colour as the plane turned gently left, then turned right, and then began to spin. Somehow a fire had broken out in the cabin area and raged fiercely, probably fed by the extra oxygen. So catastrophic was the fire that it weakened the structure of the plane, causing it to fall about 500 feet before it disintegrated in mid-air. Wreckage fell over a wide area onto the suburbs of Panorama, Belair, Blackwood and Hawthorne Dean. And due to the nature of the terrain, not all of it was ever recovered, so it was impossible to tell if oxygen had leaked before the fire. It was surmised that threads on some fittings may not have been compatible. However, when the oxygen cylinder, found near Goldview Road, was examined, surprisingly nobody on the ground was hurt, although a carport and caravan were damaged by the main part of the debris. The Air Safety Report concluded that there was insufficient information available to determine the cause of the accident. Russ's body was found in a gully in Wattiparinga Reserve, just 90 metres from the home of his brother Lloyd, who lived in Banksia Crescent, Belair. Lloyd was not home at the time. The brothers had spoken on Friday, when Russ said he would be flying right over his brother's house the next day. It was not a good year for Ross Air Charter. Just a few weeks earlier, on the 1st of February 1976, a Ross Air Cessna 172 collided with a Piper Cherokee on its final approach to Parafield Airport. There were 4 people on the Cessna and 1 in the Piper. All 5 died in the accident. Ross Air had been founded in October 1963 and had only suffered one previous incident resulting in death, when 4 people died when a Beechcraft Bonanza hit a radio mast guy wire in the Moomba gas field in outback South Australia on the 25th of January 1972. After 1976, Ross Air only suffered one further fatal accident, when a Cessna 441 crashed near Redmark, killing the company's chief pilot, a civil aviation inspector, and the pilot who was retraining at the time, on the 30th of May 2017. Yet that accident spelled the end for the company, which ceased flights from that time and ceased all operations by July 2018. The young pilot's ashes were interred in Hibiscus Court Centennial Park Cemetery. 20 years later, the friend who witnessed the explosion with me bought a house in the Blackwood area and spoke by chance to some people living nearby, who happened to be the people whose carport and caravan were demolished by the falling plane. Just another of those strange coincidences that haunt the dark corners of history.